Hello everyone. This is Sajal Debnath, and today I'm going to talk about a service that I have built using VRO workflows for vRealize automation, which is shared database as a service. So before I go ahead and describe what are the workflows that I have developed and what the steps that you need to do, I wanted to mention what is shared database as a service. So typically, when it comes to database as a service in the cloud environment, be it private cloud or public cloud, we deploy a new instance of a database server. So whenever you go ahead and request a database, you get a new database instance, which is dedicated to you, and you can consume and maintain the databases. Now, in certain cases, like for example, test or development environment, and not all your applications require dedicated database, right? In that cases, you wished that you could get a simple database inside a database server. You don't need to get the database server, entire database server. And in that case, the advantage is you just get the database, you can consume the database as a service, and you are really not bothered about maintaining the database server. So nowadays we see that this shared database as a service is becoming much popular with the customers. And for last couple of engagements that I got into, there was a requirement where I had to showcase that provide shared database as a service in vRealize automation server on the private cloud built with VRE. So the end users, the work or say the use case is the end users will just simply go ahead and request a catalog item. They provide the username, password, and the database name, and the database would be created in the database server. And obviously, the database server will be shared by multiple users. That's the typical use case of a shared database service, database as a service. And in this case, as I already mentioned, that you don't really need to maintain the database server, the health of the database server, the space, and everything else. You just go ahead, consume the database, and you can delete the database as and when required. As when you do not require the database, you simply go ahead and destroy the database instance, and you pay for that. That is the whole idea of shared database as a service. Now, as we know that VRA does not give these kind of capabilities out of the box, so I built a custom workflow which will actually, when you run it, it will go ahead and set up the environment and give you out of the box shared as a database service. So all you need to do as an admin, run the workflow. When you run the workflow, it would ask you for certain information which you provide, and it will automatically publish three different workflows or say custom services in catalog in VRA, and which end users can utilize to request for shared database as a service. As of now, in this package, I have support for MS SQL Server, MySQL Server, and PostgreSQL Server. So before you go ahead and utilize this, you need to have a working vRealize automation environment backing up with say vCenter server or something else. And you need to have the three database servers and three database environments ready. To successfully run and set up the environments, you do not need to have all three environments. You may have, there's a possibility that you may require only MS SQL database, that in your environment you want to provide MS SQL database as a service to your end users. So you just select what you require and do not provide any input for the rest of the two. It will not create the environment for the rest of the two. So you just need to give the information that you require. So first thing first, all you need to do, I have given in my blog the link to the GitHub repository from where you can download the package. So what you need to do, you need to download the package and import into vRealize Orchestrator server. So vRealize Orchestrator has three different modes of running: run, design, and administer. So go to administer mode, and this is my package, which is com.vmr.db hyphen as a service dot package. So you just need to go to administer mode and import package from folder. See, you need to package import package, you just need to select the package, So go ahead and select the database as a service package com.vmware.db hyphen as hyphen a hyphen service.package and click on open. It will show you the certificate information and the information about a bit about the package, right? And then click on import. It will show you the list of details of whatever component that's there inside this package. So I would say select all and import selected elements. So when the package is imported, you would be able to see the imported package that com.vmware.db as a service, and you get to see the workflows that's there that was imported as part of the package, the actions that were imported as part of the package, and the configuration resources and other components of the package. Go to run stage. To need to run this package, you need to go to the run stage, and under workflows you'd be able to see that there's a database as a service particular folder that has been imported as part of the package. There are three different folders. The database creation workflows contains the workflows that is related to creating the workflows, actually creates the apologies that the workflow that actually creates the database. The second one is environment setup workflows. These were set of workflows sets up the environment for the database. And there are helper workflows which is set and get VM information for run script in VM guest. And there is one other master workflow which is set up database as a service environment. So once you get these workflows and the actions are imported in your VRO server, what you need to do is run this particular workflow, set up database as a service environment. This is one time activity, so you need to run this as an admin because you would have the rights to configure the elements, and this is setting up the entire environment, right? So first you need to run this setup database as a service environment workflow as an admin. But before I go ahead and do that, I want to show you my VRA environment that I have configured. So as part of the prerequisites, you should have a VRI environment with everything pre-configured, so that you can import, run, and create those catalog items. Now this is my VRA environment, and if I go into catalog, you would be able to see that there are services which is container service, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS service. There is nothing else. And if I go to design and SaaS blueprints, I see only two by the default SaaS blueprints that comes with vRealize automation 7.3. There's nothing else. So first I need to run this particular workflow. You can simply right click on, say, start workflow, set up database as a service. So I'm running this as an admin, right? And this is the only time when you will have to interact with VRO. Otherwise you don't need to interact with VRO at all. So first, VRA cafe host. You need to select the cafe host on which to run this. So this is my cafe host. I have selected that. Now select the service where the catalog items will be added. So I'm going to publish catalog items like DB as a service item. So you need to select the service where those catalog items needs to be part of. So you select the cafe host and then administration and then services, and I see DB as a service. So I have already created DB as a service item in my VRE. You can select any one of the rest of them or create a new one as per your requirement. So I selected DB as a service, and then the entitlement of which this should be part of. All right. So again, go ahead and select the entitlements. So I wanted these workflows to be part of dev environment. So on the dev environment, these services would be available, right? So I selected. And if you have any approval policy or if you want to attach any approval policies with these catalog items, then you can go ahead and select these approval policies. By default I am not selecting any approval policies because I just wanted to run it as it is. But otherwise you can simply go ahead and select the approval policies that you require. In my environment there is no such approval policies, so I will not be able to select any. But if your environment, if you want to tag these catalog items to be attached to the approval policies, please go ahead and attach the approval policies. In the next three pages, it would sub areas, it would ask you for the VM information. Now, since this is shared database as a service, you need to have already have a database server pre-configured for you. So first stage, I'm going to select my PostgreSQL virtual machine, which is going to run my or host my databases, right? So I'm going to select the virtual machine which has my PostgreSQL database. So this is my PostgreSQL database, and then provide the user ID and password, admin user ID and password. So typically it's root user or root user or any other admin ID, because using these rights the database creation script should be run. So you need to give an admin right to these particular virtual machines. The next one is MySQL database VM. So remember, as I mentioned, that you need to provide the VM details. But if you do not have a say MySQL environment or say MS SQL environment, you select as per your requirement, right? If you do not need any of the data bases, say for example 2 out of 3 you want or 1 out of 3 you want, so you can select accordingly. Simply skip the rest of the portion, and that should run fine. For this use case, I wanted to showcase all three of the database creation, like how you go ahead and create the database, how it actually these workflows goes ahead and create the databases for the end users as they require it. So that's why I have selected all of them, but it is not mandatory. Submit the workflow. So as I submit the workflow, it will go through multiple process of creating the catalog items, publishing it, say creating a blueprint, then publish it, and then go ahead and attach this catalog items to the particular service and then publish the service. So this workflow has successfully run. Whether it was successful or not, we can always check it in the VRA server. So if I go back and check my blueprints now, so I see under design ZAS blueprint, there are three different blueprints that has already been added: MS SQL DB as a service, MySQL DB as a service, and PostgreSQL DB as a service. Three different blueprints that has been added, and they are already posted in the catalog items as well. And there is a separate service category, that DB as a service. I selected it. So under DB as a service category, I have three different services: MS SQL as a service, MySQL DB as a service, and PostgreSQL DB as a service, right? So I have my environment is set up. I don't need to come to VRO anymore. And now this is my PG admin. I have connected to my database server, and I wanted to see if there is any such database that has been created for me. I see only the default Postgres database and default login Postgres login. Similarly, if I go to my MySQL server, there is only these default services, default databases that has been created for me. And if I go to my MS SQL database server, I refresh the databases, and I can see that there are only two databases, that is a mail server database and a VRA database that is running. Okay, so let's go ahead and request for the PostgreSQL DB as a service. Let's first create a Postgres database. Say provide a destiny description. Say test run the reasons, and in the next page, I need to provide the name of the DB user. Say Sajal, add a password, and the name of a DB. Say Sajal DB. This is what I want to create. So I submitted the request. The request is in progress, so I can see the request is in progress. So if I go back to my VRO server, I can see say database creation workflows, PostgreSQL user and DB, create Postgre user and DB. This particular should have a workflow run. So let us just wait for a couple of say 10 15, not couple of say 10 15 seconds, because it takes certain time for the VRA server to fire that workflow. So as you can see that create PostgreSQL user and DB has been run successfully, this particular workflow, because I wanted to create PostgreSQL server. So it ran that particular workflow, and let's just see whether it has actually created that database. So refreshed. Okay, I see that there's a Sajal DB that has been created for me, and there's a user that has been created by the name Sajal. So what it does actually is creates a user first and then creates the database by the name that I wanted to create, and makes the owner, sets the owner as the user that I have created. So now Sajal has Sajal user in Postgre database has a right on the Sajal DB, and you can simply click connect to the database using the database connection methods. So my PostgreSQL server has been successfully created. Let's go back and request for MySQL DB as a service. I'll give same say test and test run, and I would give the same user say Sajal DB. So let's just double check MySQL server, refresh the connection. There is only these four databases, so there is no such database as Sajal DB, and there is no such user as Sajal, right? So let's go ahead and submit the request. The request has been submitted successfully, and it's in progress. And while the request is being progressed, so it's being run, let's go ahead and check the result of the previous workflow run. So we see that it was created, and I can see that workflow which create PostgreSQL user and DB was run. The script was successful and outputted. There was certain output, whatever output that script that VRO workflow run has given, it would be, you would be able to see it here, and you can see the status the request was successfully completed. It shows you the steps that user was Sajal and DB was Sajal DB, right? Let's go back and check in VRO, though you do not need to check, it would automatically run. So it just, but as an admin, if you want to check, create MySQL user and DB is being run, right? And it is being executed, and it's waiting for the return of the result, the database to be created, and for the results, right? So we can wait for the run, or you can check in between. Okay, that has been completed successfully, so database has been created. Okay, so let's go ahead and check in MySQL database whether the database was created. Yep, so you can see that Sajal DB was created, and in the user section you can see that Sajal user was created, right? So this is the database Sajal DB, and if you want to see the properties, you can see that you can run the queries against it, saying that who is the user and stuff, but the database is already there. The last portion is creating a MS SQL server. So you can, I would request for MS SQL server, and provide the name of the DB user, Sajal, password, and then database. So I want to create a database as Sajal DB of the, Sajal would be the owner, and create a new user Sajal as well. So let's go ahead and check in the database. There is no such user logins, no such user as Sajal. So let's submit this workflow or submit this request. My request was submitted and it's in progress, right? So it should fire the workflow create MS SQL user and DB. This particular workflow, it has already started. So my request in VRA has fired this particular workflow create MS SQL user and DB, right? And it would go ahead and run the user and DB. So it has successfully run create MS SQL user and DB. So let's go ahead and now check whether those database and user was created or not. That particular database, I can see that Sajal DB has been created for me. And if I go to security logins, I can see that Sajal user has been created as well. If I go to select the properties and see user mappings, I can see he is the DBO of the database Sajal DB. So this is how the databases can be created, and using this workflow you can simply go ahead and create a shared database. So all you need to do is just import the package that I have given or provided in the GitHub repository. Run at for the first time, run setup database as a service environment, this particular workflow which would set up the backend infrastructure for providing database as a service workflow. And then your users will simply go ahead and request for the resources. Couple of things. So postgre database, I enabled a remote access because your data users would be accessing it remotely. And for MySQL server, uh, I have enabled root login without password for a local server, because my scripts would be running as a low root user, but the databases would be created as a root user, and I didn't wanted to provide hard code the password into my scripts. So you can change the nature of that as well. So for which, if you want to now, the next part is how you can change the environment. Say your script creation, you can want to change. So under guest script manager, you'd find script management and then edit script configuration. See, if you run this particular workflow and okay, so probably that is not something I would be showing it here, because there is there's some configuration that I made. I don't want to make changes on that. But if you really see a need for changing that, you can let me know, and I can make the changes accordingly, or I can showcase how to make the changes. Okay, thank you for watching. Do let me know your feedbacks and whether it was helpful to you or not. And if you have any other use cases in mind, do let me know, and I'd be more than happy to implement them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time.